The second strange thing that happened that day was this. Halfway up the highway into the mountains from Denver, I pulled over to write a poem in my poetry bag, and all of my books were gone. 11 or 12 years of poetry gone. I went crazy. Why would anyone open that old post office truck and steal an old brown leather bag full of spiral-bound notebooks when there were expensive guitars and speakers and food and tobacco? Maybe Debbie had put them somewhere I wasn't looking. There were lots of cubby holes in that old truck. It was snowing pretty bad by now, and I had to get on over and through the passes and tunnels to Copper Mountain so I could sleep and hit the road for Park City, Utah the next morning. I moved on, more than broken-hearted. When I finally got to Mo and Trish's house, I went in and waited till 9 o'clock that night to call Debbie and see if she knew anything. She finally got to her mother's house and got all the messages to call me at Mo's. And when the phone rang, I grabbed it crying and said, "I miss you, and someone got in the truck at the airport and stole all my poetry." And she said, "John, I have it all. Calm down." I said, "What?" She said, "You're liable to get drunk and freeze to death out there this winter, and if that should happen, no one would know where or who to call, and all of this beautiful poetry and music would be lost forever." So I stole it, and I'm going to type it all up for you, and in the spring, when you come home, we'll make a book of it and send it to the Library of Congress so the world will always have it. Well, I'll be damned. That crazy Irish wench had stolen my pot of gold. I didn't know whether to cuss or thank God. I finally said, "Well, I guess you're right, and I should calm down, but by God, you sure gave me a scare." She said, "When you go out to the scallywag to go to sleep tonight, you'll find 2 new notebooks with 2 new pens under your pillow. You can write some new things now. I love you, you old bastard. Good night." Women, I will never understand them as long as I live. On to Park City, Utah by myself in a snowstorm. The old truck ran good, 45 miles an hour, and the damned old thing went through snow like a yacht on a lake on a calm day. It was cold in there, though. I wrapped blankets around my legs and kept my Sorel boots on and my old army parka with the fur hooded, zipped, and the buttoned all the way up to the chin, and I wore ski mittens to keep my hands from freezing. My breath turned ice on the inside of the windows, and as I drove, I constantly scraped ice in order to see the snow-covered road. The old catalytic heater couldn't keep up with an old truck with no insulation and holes in the floor and just bare metal walls, and the floorboard was completely rust holes. The wind blew through that truck like a worn-out sail. I kept going in the beauty of the Rockies, and the ghosts of mountain men from 200 years ago kept saying in my ear, "Wait till you get to town, boy. Whiskey, women, good music, hot water, a warm bed for a few days, and you'll be fine." I became a man from another era as I drove, coming down the mountains and seeing no sign of life, for hundreds of miles across barren, snow-covered valleys can take your breath away. What would it have been like on a horse wrapped in a buffalo robe? How did those men ever do it? Dreams and insanity and an incurable desire for freedom and adventure at all costs. That's how they did it. They learned survival as they went, or they died. I did the same. I slept at night, now that Debbie was gone, under the feather mattress inside the bedroll. I stayed warm in there, and the heater kept my engine from freezing. Remember, the truck had no heat, just that old catalytic Navy-issue propane heater. I constantly checked to make sure I wouldn't run out of propane for the heater or the gas for the truck. I had plenty of food and also Debbie's skis if I broke down, but I wasn't much of a skier. I also had a cook stove and a skillet and a camp coffee percolator. I'd be fine as long as I didn't freeze or go nuts. By the time I got to Park City, Utah, I had frostbitten my back from my shoulders to my waist and didn't know it. I found out when I finally got a hot bath and the water burnt like lighter fluid, and the hotel owner took a look and said, "Frostbite, aloe vera, burn plant." I hadn't damaged the skin, so it eventually peeled and healed, but it was worse than any sunburn you could ever have. I talked waitresses all over the Rockies into rubbing aloe vera on my back long after I was healed. Park City was great, and they couldn't wait for me to get back in February. Oh, on I went to Donner Pass. It was a Saturday night, as I recall. I finished the show at the Prospector Inn at the top of Main Street in Park City, Utah, and had to play in Nevada City by Wednesday night. As I drove the scallywag out of the mountains down towards Salt Lake City, the wind was blowing out of the northwest, and the wind chill was about 40 below. The temperature was about 20 below, and it was so cold in the truck the tape deck was frozen. All of my drinking water was frozen, and I thought I would shiver to death. My mustache froze to my beard, and I started out across the salt plains. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I pulled into Winnemucca, Nevada, at a Union 76 truck plaza. I parked and went to get out of that old truck, and I swear my knees and my hips and fingers and toes and shoulders were frozen from shivering. As I walked in the door of that truck stop, there were huge blowers blowing heat inside the door. I stood there for 45 minutes thawing out. I have never been that cold since, and I never will, if I can keep from it. I stayed in that restaurant for about 3 hours. Daylight came, and the sun was shining on the scallywag in the parking lot, and I was so tired I knew I had to sleep. I finally walked out to the truck, crawled in, got under the blankets, and fell asleep. It was about 2 degrees, a heat front. I slept for about 5 hours or so and woke up in the late afternoon. I went back in and got coffee for the road. I pulled into Reno in the middle of the night. It must have been 30 degrees in Reno. I pulled in another Union 76 and filled up and got a 1-hour hot shower and pulled out all dressed in clean clothes and headed over Donner Pass. Nevada City, California. It was great to get indoors at Wilson and Cisco's. I'd been gone a month and I had to be gone again to do it all over within 3 or 4 days. Wilson wanted to go with me and take his dog Pearl, and I finally said yes, and we took off for South Shore, Tahoe. A new adventure for February. Away we went. We pulled into the mine shaft in Tahoe and damn near froze again. I came down with pneumonia. Wilson got me well and Pearl kept me warm. She'd crawl down in the bedroll and wrap herself around my feet. The gig went well. We moved on across Highway 50 east, across the middle of Nevada toward Colorado. Wilson and Pearl brought my spirits up, and we were all laughing soon and crossing that big northern desert.